What's going on, guys? So the second mic drop that Apple had outside of the MacBook Air, I would say, are the new chips that are more for the enthusiasts, which is the M3 Ultra as well as the M4 Max, and the new Mac Studio as well. So I'm going to cover the new chips, give you guys my thoughts, because I think this is where this could be a turning point for Apple in terms of hardware, another place where they can get a lot of market share. So I'll cover over the M3 Ultra first, and then I'll go to the Mac Studio, which has the M4 Ultra, or M4 Max, I should say, and then do a little bit of comparison between the first generation, the previous generation, and what is out now. So let's dive into it, but first, a word from our sponsor, Nobody. All right, so the naming scheme, I know people are upset. They're like, why isn't this the M4 Ultra, right? The M3 is done. There's good reason for that. I'll get into that in a second, but just looking at the quick description at the top, right? It's saying that this M3 Ultra is 2.6 times more performant than the M1 Ultra, along with Thunderbolt 5, and half a terabyte of unified memory. This, I would say, is probably the more telling thing than anything else when it comes to performance. Now, I'm not coming out here as like an AI expert or some large language model expert on like how things work, but from like a base understanding, I do know that a lot of these are being ran off of GPUs, and the VRAM that's linked to these GPUs are kind of limited, especially on the NVIDIA front. However, with Apple also being in the game and their processors being so good when it comes to performance and this whole unified memory, I don't know if they were looking into the future, having access to half a terabyte of unified memory that your large language model can use locally is insane. And the fact that like the 5090 only goes up to 32 gigabytes of VRAM, this in terms of price to performance, if what you intend to do is a lot of local LLMs, there is no reason to pick up a 5090, 4090, or pretty much any NVIDIA GPU at this point, unless you want a game with a blurry mess. That's besides the point. Let's just go ahead and hop into the M3 Ultra, see what else is new. So this is where people need to understand that this is why it's not called the M4 Ultra. It's because the M3 Ultra is built using Apple's innovative Ultra Fusion, blah, 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 because it links two M3 Max dies. So it is a bit puzzling why this is just now releasing instead of it being released with the rest of the M3 generation. Maybe they really were just working towards having the unified memory be in its place when it comes to the M3 Ultra, so that's why they released it. So nice to see that it's the M3 Max fused together. So I would say core count aside, I'll get into that during like the comparison. In terms of performance, what Apple is claiming is that it delivers 1.5 more performance than the previous generation and 1.8 on the M1 Ultra. So nearly 2 times as fast, and about, I'd say, 50% faster than the previous generation. So not too bad. It also brings up the largest GPU, which is, once again, I think this is crazy, 80 GPU cores. That number really doesn't mean that much to me, but in terms of performance, Apple says it's 2.6 times faster. So that's pretty impressive, I would say. Going over to the advanced graphics, blah, blah, blah. Okay, here we go. So a powerful 32-core neural engine fuels AI and machine learning, powers Apple Intelligence, the personal intelligence system that blah, 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 blah. It can also do up to almost a terabyte of memory bandwidth. And I think this is probably going to be an interesting thing by Apple if they intend to allow users to run Apple Intelligence locally within their own home, like before going off into like Apple's own servers and even ChatGPT servers, Microsoft servers, or whatever servers they use, right? You can first have a default to like check your own Mac Studio that can like do the processing so it has those GPU cores. If it can't figure it out and it needs more horsepower, then it goes off to Apple servers. If it can't figure out what it needs to do there, then it goes off to ChatGPT and whatnot. But I think this is pretty cool if you are able to do this locally, if that's the future. So unparalleled memory, almost mixed up that word. This is where the M3 Ultra shines. That 512 gigabytes of memory is just crazy, right? The amount of work you can do with that, insane. I'm curious what the price is on that. Yeah, Thunderbolt 5, we already know about Thunderbolt 5 from the earlier M4 Pro models that came out earlier this year. So it looks like the back of this is just straight Thunderbolt 5, which is great. Ultra Fusion, cool. Media engine, that's always been there. Display engine can support up to 8 Pro XDR displays. if you have that many displays, if you have that many Pro XDR displays, I need to be your friend. Not to steal from you, but to just be friends with you. Secure enclave, so yeah, that's the whole secure boot stuff, better for the environment, yada, yada, yada. So cool. So now let's just look at the Mac Studio by itself and also learn a little bit more about the M4 Max. I don't think it's going to be anything new from the MacBook Pro side of things. But yeah, so Thunderbolt 5 is here, 512 gigabytes of unified memory, and 16 terabytes of SSD. So hopping in here, doesn't seem too much. Kind of talking about more of the chip itself. M4 Max supports half terabyte, like we said before, 16 terabytes, Thunderbolt 5. Performance juggernaut. Once again, this just seems like another article that's kind of just highlighting the M3 Ultra itself. So we do have some claims from Apple. Once again, these claims are pretty much in line with what already came out during the MacBook Pro M4 Max release, so nothing really crazy here. So I'm pretty much just going to hop over to the comparison and see what has come before versus where we are now. Not sure if I said this at the beginning of the video, but if you're a person who has a Mac Studio, you do not need to upgrade, okay? You are completely fine with the machine you have. I'd say the only reason you should upgrade is because your current machine does not work for you. If your current machine, in terms of like your hobby or your job, is bottlenecked and you need to have more horsepower, M4 or M3 Ultra might be the one for you. I don't know if you need to go all the way over to the M4 Max, but you know, it is an cheaper way to get into the system or, you know, the processor performance that you need versus going through the MacBook route. But yeah, I'd say if the machine's working for you right now, don't even bother watching these videos. It's nice to know the numbers, but it's fine with the purchase you have. So as you can see here, it looks to be discontinued with the M1 Mac Studio and the M2 Mac Studio. And I know a lot of people were wondering about the M3 Mac Studio. Here it is. It's the M3 Ultra. So Apple Intelligence across the board, we have up to 32 cores. Keep that in mind. And we also have up to 80 cores. This is the crazy thing, right? 512 gigabytes of memory. Insane. Looks like we're doubling the storage count as well with 16 terabytes. And then looking at the M3 Ultra chip, right? This is showing, once again, up to. We have the hardware accelerated ray tracing. So that's one thing to keep in mind. If there are developers that are using ray tracing, and I think even like creators as well, when it comes to like animation and stuff, right? M3 Ultra is probably going to be a pretty good chip when it comes to like rendering and just processing that stuff versus like the M2 Ultra. With that being said, the memory bandwidth doesn't look to be that much higher. Do keep in mind this is two M3 Max chips. Looking at the media engine, it's pretty much the same, right? We have 244 and the AV1 decoder. So if your company or if whatever you want to save, you want it to be an AV1, the decoding engine here on the M3 Ultra is going to be able to do that, as well as the M4 Max. But I'd say, you know, if you don't need the fast processing of the AV1 decoder, you can do it completely fine on the M2 Max or the M1 Max as well, Mac Studios. All right, Apple Intelligence, we're not going to waste your time with that. But as you can see here, this is where I was like the naming scheme of Apple could change here, because you only get 32 gigabytes of RAM with the lower M4 chip, but with the higher tier M4 chip, you go up to 120 gigabytes of memory. And then with the M3 Ultra, right, you get 96 or 256, but if you want that 512, you have to get the higher spec M3 Ultra. So do keep that in mind. Goes all the way up to 16 terabytes, but that is only for the Ultra. The Max caps out at 8 terabytes is what it looks like. Displays, 8 displays, 8 6K displays. Like if you have that many displays, once again, I should be friends with you. In terms of weight, height, width, depth, all pretty much the same, except for the weight is slightly heavier on the M4 Max and the M3 Ultra. Audio is the same. Keyboard doesn't even really exist. Pretty much the same. Wi-Fi 6E on the newer models. Ports are pretty much the same. Just know that you're getting Thunderbolt 5 instead of Thunderbolt 4. 10 gig Ethernet as well, and then that's pretty much it. So I actually do want to see what it's like to order one of these. This is the base model at $2,000. So this is where I was saying like this could be like M4A, M4B. I don't know. I'm not a product designer. Don't tell me to do anything. But if there's some way for the consumer to know like what is the entry level max chip versus like what's the higher tier max chip, same with the Ultra, that would be nice. But yeah, if we do the base M4, we go up to, never mind, we're stuck at 36 gigabytes of memory. But we can still go up to 8 terabytes of storage, which is great. Wouldn't do this though, because with a lot of the YouTube videos that I've seen online, you can just upgrade the Mac Studio yourself. Probably gonna void your warranty, but you know, I'd say if you're willing to take that risk, by all means. Now, if you go for the higher spec M4 Max, you do have access to 128 gigabytes of memory, but initially your price goes up to 2,500. If you want that 128 gigabytes of memory, you go up to 3,500, and you can still go up to 8 terabytes. Moving up to the next tier, we have the base M3 Ultra chip. And the only options we have are 96 and 256, and we can go up to 16 terabytes as well. Just for the fun of it, I'm just going to throw up to 16 terabytes. Actually, let me keep it at 1 terabyte for now. So $4,000 if you want the entry level M3 Ultra. Now, the higher spec model is going to start at $5,500. Given the scalping price of like the 5090, you're not too far off for $5,500. But you do drop down, or you don't drop down, you're at 96 unified memory, but you have the option to go to 256 or 512. SSD is still a bit steep. Once again, I'd say just look online if you want to do it yourself. But if you want all the bells and whistles, I'll keep the licensing stuff out the way. This thing starts at $1,400. That's insane. Definitely going to keep the memory at a low, but this is under 10 grand. And I say that so casually as if I could afford this. I'm definitely not going to continue and buy this now. But I think the thing that people really need to keep an eye on, especially with some of these tests that some of these other YouTubers are going to do, is I'm just interested at how good these local large language models are going to be able to utilize this amount of RAM. And I'm actually curious, how big of a model can you run and still get pretty nice responses or results with the M3 Ultra? And this actually makes me more excited for the M4 Ultra whenever that drops. But hopefully they can get the cadence better on the release schedule for these chips, because it is a little bit confusing how we're like pretty much deep into the M4 generation, but stuff from the M3 is still coming out. But regardless, that's pretty much my thoughts on the M3 Ultra, M4 Max. Once again, if you already have the Mac Studio, don't bother upgrading unless your machine can't do what it needs to do. But if it doesn't, I'm curious what you do. It'd be a nice conversation. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. What are your thoughts on the new Mac Studio M3 Ultra, M4 Max? Am I crazy? Am I not? Appreciate every single sub, like, and comment. And as always, guys, much love.